What's happening, Bills Mafia? Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I am joined by recurring guests on the show, another episode appearance from my guy here, CJ the Painkiller DeSimone. CJ, thanks for joining me, buddy.
Hey, it's my pleasure. You know I love coming on anytime you have me on, so.
Appreciate it. You've had a very busy week, and you're the first guy that I wanted to chat with in regards to some news as far as your New York Jets. The AFC East is going to look a little bit different as the New York Jets sent Sam Darnold packing. I want your thoughts on, first and foremost, the Sam Darnold trade, the return. You got a couple draft picks, actually 3 draft picks, a 6th in this year's draft, a 2nd in 2022, and a 4th in 2022. Just give me your thoughts on the trade, the Sam Darnold trade from the host himself of the Weapons Hot podcast, CJ DeSimone.
Well, first off, thank you for the intro. We're actually no longer a podcast; we are a broadcast now.
That's right.
It's actually Weapons Hot, a New York Jets fan broadcast on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's to me the Sam Darnold trade. It had to happen, and I wrote an argument. I wrote an article for Worldwide Sports Radio Network over the past 24, 48 hours, basically stating my reasons about the Sam Darnold trade, that this trade couldn't have happened at a better time than for both teams than it did right now. For the New York Jets, you got a 6th round pick, you got a 2nd and a 4th in 2022, which I thought, believe it or not, was a little bit more compensation than I thought that the New York Jets were going to get. According to ESPN, CBS Sports, Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports, etc., they didn't expect the Jets to get no more than a 5th round pick for Sam Darnold. There was some that would maybe go as high as a 4th. So there was a lot of talk. But also, if you take a look around the league, especially around the Shanahans, right? One of the talks we've heard about is Sam Darnold may be going to the San Francisco 49ers, in that Kyle Shanahan offense. The 49ers did not even bother to make a phone call to the New York Jets in inquiry for Sam Darnold. That speaks volumes. That speaks volumes in the fact that maybe Kyle Shanahan and company did not feel that Sam Darnold could even be saved by the Kyle Shanahan offense, which is, believe it or not, quarterback-friendly offense. NFL. So, it begs to differ that as long as there is an offensive coordinator or a head coach that feels like that they could fix Sam Darnold, because of how young he is, because of the lack of weapons and the lack of talents the New York Jets failed to surround him with here, they think that the kid can be fixed. But when you go and take a look at the kid, and I've watched the kid for 3 years, there's quite a few mechanical issues and quite a few mistakes that he's making in year 3, that he's made in year 3, should I say, that he shouldn't be making anymore. You should only make those in year 1, maybe year 2 on the way out. But again, the New York Jets drafted Sam Darnold into a completely just ridiculous situation. It was a very toxic situation. And, I could go into great detail, but I don't want to bore your listeners with all of that. Unless they want a good laugh at the Jets' expense. But the rest of the league's been doing that for years. So, what the hell?
Right. And in terms of the toxic situation that Darnold was drafted into, it's no secret that the name that comes to mind is Adam Gase. And now we'll get into the new head coach, Robert Saleh, a little bit later in the show. But typically when you have that head coaching turnover where you have a new head coach coming in the building, he typically wants his own guy. And I thought that the writing was somewhat on the wall. I wasn't necessarily shocked by the fact that the Jets traded Sam Darnold. Now it's we live in a what have you done for me lately? What's next? Type mentality, mindset in the National Football League. It's almost like out with the old, in with the new. We wish Sam Darnold well. Jets fans have only wished Sam Darnold well, and that shows that the fan base is classy. Heading into Carolina, I hope that he gets a better opportunity out there, and I think he will. But now, my next question is, who is the next quarterback of the New York Jets? Which quarterback will the Jets take, in your humble opinion, from everything that you've heard, with the second overall pick, who do you see them taking?
Well, with everything that I've read so far, and especially with the news or lack thereof coming out of Forum Park. Now, one of the refreshing things, at least for me as a New York Jets fan, is that there are practically no leaks coming out of Forum Park. And to me, Joe Douglas, when he steps in front of a microphone, he steps in front of a camera, and he gives his press conferences, he is the man at giving you everything, yet giving you nothing. So he'll tell you when he went to Zach Wilson's pro day that, yeah, he talked about this, he talked about that. You know, he liked the way Zach's mechanics looked, and so on and so forth. And you know, and then you have Steve Young who put his 2 cents worth in. So to me, I think that the New York Jets are locked into Zach Wilson. Now, there's also Justin Fields out there. There's also Mac Jones. Now, the New York Jets, I believe, have attended all of the quarterbacks' pro days, save for Trevor Lawrence. It's not known if they did or they did not attend his pro day. I mean, basically, what's there to attend, because it looks like that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the number 1 overall pick. But there have been some crazy scenarios that have been thrown around, Ryan, and you and I talked about this at length at the AFC Summit. We've talked about this off the air. We've talked about this on Weapons Hot, the Jets Factor podcast when it was in existence. You know, there are a lot of strange things that can happen with the NFL draft. If somebody would have told me in 2018 that the Cleveland Browns were going to draft Baker Mayfield first overall, I would have told somebody they were nuts. Because Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson were scheduled to go like 5th, 6th, 10th, 12th, the middle toward the end of the first round, right? We were talking about Sam Darnold was supposed to go first overall to the Cleveland Browns. Josh Allen was going somewhere. He was, I believe, he was definitely going to the Bills. Josh Rosen was going somewhere. But there were different names that were attached to every single team that was quarterback needy at the top of that draft. Now, as a Jets fan, we were delighted when Sam Darnold fell to us at 3. We thought we finally got our franchise quarterback. The problem is when you take a look at what Sam Darnold was drafted into at that particular point, very toxic situation. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that on draft day, nobody really knows what anybody's going to do until it actually happens. But everyone wants to report, or everybody feels like that Zach Wilson is going number 2 overall to the New York Jets. So, in my gut, I think that assumption could in fact be correct. But I'm still putting a little bit of a question mark next to it, because Justin Fields just announced that there's going to be another pro day, so he's going to be throwing for members of the 49ers. A lot of people have talked about that the 49ers moving up to the number 3 spot could potentially have their eye on either Mac Jones or Justin Fields. To me, as a New York Jets fan, if the Jets drafted either Justin Fields or Mac Jones, I probably would not be disappointed with either, because I think both have the potential to have tremendous success in the NFL, provided they're drafted into a system that works for them. And I think both of those, Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, would actually work in a Michael Floor / Kyle Shanahan type offense, which the New York Jets are going to be running next year. So, to me, smart money's on Zach Wilson, but there's still that little flicker for Justin Fields.
As a Jets fan, you have a preference, of course. You're dialed into the team. You want to see this team finally turn it around. And I can speak to that as a Bills fan of constantly wondering each and every year which quarterback were the Bills going to take. Were they going to take one as they were trying to replace Jim Kelly? And unfortunately, it took them a long time to do that. It's taken the Jets even a longer time to replace Joe Namath, Broadway Joe. They're still looking to replace him. So, who do you see as – what's that?
The last true franchise quarterback that the New York Jets had seriously was Chad Pennington.
Yeah, that's true. I liked me some Chad Pennington. In his prime, he was pretty good. He was pretty good. Yeah, but which quarterback would you want the Jets to take?
For me, to be honest with you, if I had to pick between Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, it would kind of be like splitting hairs. But you know what? I would take Zach Wilson. I think because of the fact that from all parts, including Steve Young, who's pretty dialed into that BYU program, and Steve Young and also Chris Sims, who also seems to be very, very dialed in regards to these quarterbacks. And a lot of people really don't give Chris Sims a lot of credit, but you know what? He came out and had some very positive things to say about Zach Wilson, and had similar positive things to say about Justin Fields, but a little bit more about Wilson. He feels like Wilson would be a little bit more of a day one type starter for the New York Jets rather than Justin Fields. So for me, smart money, I'll go with what Chris Sims says because he's got a tremendous track record when it comes to quarterbacks. So I'll go after Zach Wilson all day long. To me, Ryan, you know how I feel about it. I really don't care as long as they come in and here and they perform. Because look, all right, we've joked about it both on the air, off the air about Josh Allen. Okay, Josh Allen, big arm, accuracy issues, mobile in the pocket, has difficulty finding targets. Right, that was the knock on Josh Allen. Plus, coming to a small school. Right, that was the knock on Josh Allen coming out.
Right.
What did this kid accomplish this year? In the past 2 years. In the past 2 years, he's increased his accuracy. He's decreased his turnovers. He's become more proficient in passing from the pocket. Now that he's got a plethora of weapons around him and a $75 million offensive line that the Buffalo Bills invested to keep their star quarterback upright. Your Bills went 12-4, won the AFC East, made an AFC Championship game appearance, and are definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with within the AFC East for at least the next 5 years, from what I can see. Okay? And again, this is from a kid who from all respects, was being compared to Christian Hackenberg. Okay?
Right.
And now look where he is. Okay? So you feel the tension in my voice, right? The tension in my voice is because this very simple formula, which for some reason the New York Jets organization in past GMs have been unable to digest for whatever reason. Okay? Yes, I'm looking at you, Mike Gagnon. Yes, I'm looking at you, John Idzik. Yes, I'm looking at you, Todd Bowles. Yes, I'm looking at you, Adam Gase. Okay? They could not put together this very simple thing. Build from the inside out, build your trenches, protect your quarterback, get him some weapons to get him the ball. No, let's just go and back up the lime green Pinto we got sitting out back. Go get a couple of traffic cones and a rain barrel and see how that works out as an offensive line. Oh, but wait, there's more. We got a dude in a wheelchair named Frank Gore who could come in here and take the majority of the snaps. We can have draft picks just continue to warm the bench. Okay? Yeah, let's do that. Oh, yeah, baby. Super Bowl's coming to Florida Park. Yeah, that a crack pipe and a bong.
Yeah.
Snickers bar.
I think you definitely have every reason to be frustrated as a Jets fan, especially after that last season. But with last season in the rearview mirror, they symbolically and literally have turned the page. They'll have a new head coach and they'll have a new quarterback. What are your expectations when you looked at, how badly this team needed a true head coach? Adam Gase was a complete dumpster fire as a hire. We knew that even 2 years ago. We talked about it, that we didn't have the highest of expectations. You were left kind of scratching your head wondering why they had made that decision to hire Gase. Ultimately, it wasn't the right decision for obvious reasons. But now they're moving forward with Robert Saleh. What are your expectations under first-year head coach Robert Saleh, who comes from the San Francisco 49ers, brings some defensive grit to this New York Jets team, that the whole quote-unquote gangrene mentality back to the New York Jets? Are you excited for this new head coach, and what are your expectations?
Of course, I'm excited for the brand new head coach coming in, because Robert Saleh is going to inject some passion, some enthusiasm, some real fire and brimstone, which is something that has been missing from this franchise for a very long time. And the last person that came in here and really, injected any type of enthusiasm was unfortunately Rex Ryan. And I know Rex Ryan, when he came in and he took over for the New York Jets, he had the benefit of having Eric Mangini and Mangini's scouting staff, with a very good supporting cast, with a few key free agent signings, which led the Jets to back-to-back AFC Championship games. Okay, and Mark Sanchez, when he was drafted, okay, the number 6 pick overall, all right, he didn't get to go out there and to beat teams with his arm because he didn't have to, because the New York Jets already had the number 1 ranked offensive line, the number 1 ranked offensive line, yes, the number 1 ranked rushing attack, and they also had the number 1 overall defense in the league. So for Mark Sanchez coming in as a rookie quarterback with a team that was ready to go, ready to win a championship right then and there, to me was a godsend. But here, Robert Saleh is coming into a completely different picture. He's coming into an actual blank canvas where he can actually mold this piece of clay, which is the New York Jets football team right now, into whatever shape and whatever dynamic that he wants. He can mold this team in his image, and also the same thing for Joe Douglas. So for me, as a Jets fan, the expectation is you got to do better than 14. Now that we have a 17 game schedule, some people have talked about Saleh needs to make the playoffs, so he needs to be fired. To me, I'm on the complete other end of the spectrum. I want to see competitive football, because to me, this New York Jets team needs to learn how to win football games all over again. And they need to develop the one thing that they've been missing since 2008, 2009, and 2009, 2010 is a killer instinct. Being able to hold a lead, being able to put teams away in the fourth quarter. And not only that, but being able to keep your team close, in which your offense at go-ahead score, to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat instead of the other way around. Okay? So the New York Jets, to me, right now this season, it's almost like as if they're an infant. They're just born. They're a brand new baby. Okay? Now we teach them. We get to teach them how to crawl. We get to teach them how to walk. We get to teach them how to run. Okay? And then, of course, the other good things like potty training and so on and forth. Okay? But to me, as a Jets fan, all kidding aside, I want to see competitive football. I want to see a better output than I saw last year. And I want to see more heart and more emphasis on the field, because I didn't see that with Adam Gase. There were people who wanted out. Okay? And Joe Douglas, for people who said they wanted out, he gave them the golden parachute. And they got out. But now it's time where you want to make the New York Jets respectable again. And the only way for that to happen is to go out on the football field, start winning some football games, create that winning culture, and understand that the let's real hard to win is not going to be acceptable anymore. Mm-hmm. It's win or take a hike. That's it.
Right. The standard, and I can speak to this in terms of the Buffalo Sabres, for as great.
Where we are now, Ryan, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. Where we are is where you guys were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. To your point, it wasn't that long ago that the Bills were where the Jets are, currently. And I mean, to a recent example with the Buffalo Sabres, it's more about not just the players that they have or the players that they don't have, but the organization as a whole, the front office, the scouts, the VP of hockey operations, or the general manager, or whoever it's like the structure of the organization with the New York Jets needs to be rebuilt, needs to be invigorated. And I think that it's a big step when you get a guy that was in high demand. Robert Saleh was in high demand. There were a lot of teams that were very interested in him, and his recent pedigree and recent track record speaks for itself. It's what he did as far as what he did for the 49ers defense. And that Jets defense needs a ton of work. The offense, I think, is a work in progress in terms of the X's and O's. Maybe they might not have as much talent as some of these other offenses, but they have the right coaches. And I like what they've done so far this offseason, CJ, even in comparison to even the Bills or the Dolphins or even any other AFC team. Getting Corey Davis, I think, was a solid move. Is he a wide receiver one? Maybe not, but he's a solid wide receiver in this league that I was shocked was a free agent. So I think that it's a work in progress. We do have a comment here from Samuel C. White. He says the Jets should go after Justin Fields. What would make a Jets fan want Justin Fields more than Zach Wilson?
I think, really, to be honest with you, it would be the ability of what he brings to the table. And that's why I had mentioned before, in relation to Zach Wilson versus Justin Fields, it's really like splitting hairs. Because if you watch the Zach Wilson Pro Day, and then you watch the Justin Fields Pro Day, which just took place, okay, a lot of them made a lot of the similar throws, the crossbody throws. They both have big arms. They both can be accurate. They both hit, short to intermediate routes, can hit those intermediate to long routes, and especially the deep routes. They both bring incredible talent-wise to the table. But you and I both know, modern-day NFL takes place here. Mm-hmm. Can you read defenses on the fly? Are you a first-read guy like Sam Darnold? Or are you a 3-read guy? Do you have the ability to go through your progressions and see if your hot routes are not there and you see an opportunity for you to advance the ball for yourself? Are you going to run 7 yards out of bounds and take a sack? Or are you going to run for 4 or 5 yards? Are you going to move the chains? This was the biggest knock that I had against Sam Darnold, where it seemed like there were certain points of the game where Sam put his gamer hat on, and he was badass, and he was out there, and he decided to run for first downs and stuff. We saw that on the Thursday night game against Denver. And this was something that I criticized him for because I wanted to see more plays like that out of my quarterback. I want a playmaker at quarterback. I don't want a game manager. I don't want somebody who's going to be solely rely on the home run hitter. I want a playmaker. I want somebody that when the design play goes to shit, they're going to go that my quarterback is going to improvise and he's going to make something out of nothing, not just take a 7-yard back.
So I will say, I will say in terms of Darnold in comparison to Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, Wilson and Fields have that ability to improv and to make plays out of nothing, to make something out of nothing. Fields, I'd say a little bit more just in terms of how elusive he is and how quick he is. I mean, a 4.4 40 time for a quarterback, that's ridiculous. One of the faster 40 times in recent memory since the days of RG3. So that just shows you how dynamic a quarterback this guy is. And I think you're splitting hairs, as you said, between Fields and Wilson. I put out my top 5 quarterbacks today. I have Zach Wilson rated 5th. And the only reason I have Zach Wilson rated 5th is just based on certain attributes in his game. I don't know if they can be taken out of him at the NFL level. I feel like it might be a little bit too late to say, hey, Zach Wilson, throw the ball to your second read, not your first read, in certain dynamics of his game. But if he gets drafted in the right situation, much like Josh Allen did, you could pluck those out of his game. So it's a very interesting dynamic each and every year where we're trying to pick where these players will go, and really it's all situational. It depends on where they go, and the teams that need quarterbacks, the Jets, the Jaguars, they're not good teams. So they're not going to be putting these rookie quarterbacks into great situations out of the gate. So I think if it were me, I wouldn't be shocked if they took Wilson, but Fields could be a possibility as well.
Well, it depends because, see, now contrary to your point, even though you could draft a rookie quarterback into a bad situation, okay, if said team that does have a very high draft pick, like the Jaguars, like the Jets, like the 49ers, make free agent acquisition moves or a couple of acquisition moves to bolster or at least address in some minuscule way positions of need, where you're maybe not bringing a young quarterback into, like the bad news Bears, okay? Where, the kid's going to be running for his life, much like Josh Allen facing his first year in the NFL. Okay,
right.
We really got to see we really got to see Josh Allen's mobility and his escapability the first year in the NFL, and nobody knew that kid had that type of mobility. I remember my old co-host Carlos Sardinas had actually labeled Josh Allen like Michael Vick 2.0, just because of his elusiveness and his ability to get away. But basically, the kid had no choice; he was running for his life, so it made sense. Okay, I mean, you have no choice. Okay, so it was more for like an element of survival for him. So, I mean, are you going to do that now to a rookie quarterback who now has to absorb an NFL type of offense, something that he has to learn on the fly, on top of having to run for his life? Or do you do the smart thing? Do you get a veteran, let the kid sit for 4 or 5 games to absorb the speed of the game, and then you enter him in? To me, what I wanted with Sam Darnold was for Josh McCown to start the first 8 games, and then you turn the keys over to the kid. Much like the New York Giants did with Kurt Warner to Eli Manning. 2 Super Bowls later, how did that work out for the New York Giants? I'd say
worked out pretty good.
Okay. So, and regardless if the last name is Manning or whatever, this is the thing that it seems like NFL teams are getting away from. Everybody wants that plug-and-play quarterback that you're going to put in, and they're automatically going to know how to run the machine. The offense is automatically going to be dynamic. But here's the thing: you're not allowing the kid for rookie curve. Now, if the Jets open up the season at home, let's say, okay, and Zach Wilson, his first throw, ends up doing, if he's drafted by the Jets, or Justin Fields, ends up just like Sam Darnold's throw when he first started the game in Detroit, ends up being a pick 6. What are they going to do? They're going to boot a kid out of the building? Now, all of a sudden, Jets fans are going, here we go again. The Jets are going to screw up another quarterback. Here we go, blah, blah, blah. Get this kid out of here. I can hear it already. I can see it already.
Right.
Because so much PTSD in this fan base, it's ridiculous. This is why, to me, regardless of who the Jets drafted to, whether it's Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, go get a Matt Moore. Go get an Alex Smith. Bring them in. And let them know we're bringing you in on a 1-year deal. And this is your mission. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to teach this kid how to be a professional. And then at the midway point of the choosing of at some point of our choosing during the course of the season, you're going to get yanked, and the kid's going to take over. And that's it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I tweeted that, I think it was today or yesterday. I've been very active on Twitter, so it's all kind of losing its, time frame. But, I mean, the options as far as a veteran quarterback to go out and get, they're dwindling. I mean, you got Alex Smith, A.J. McCarron, RG3. I mean, you have very few options as far as who could come in and start a few games. But I think no matter who it is that you get, whether it's Alex Smith, right, whether ideally Alex Smith, you're throwing them out there to protect your investment in the guy that you just drafted. You have to protect that investment and not throw him out there too soon, so that if he struggles, it's not it's throwing him on a dagger pretty much. And that's kind of what they did with Sam Darnold, obviously. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think in terms of where they are at this offseason, if I was a first year head coach and I wanted to establish my quote unquote culture within a franchise, I wouldn't want to start my first season as a head coach with a rookie quarterback. And Sean McDermott actually was very vocal within the Bills, organization, within One Bills Drive, about wanting a veteran quarterback that first year, and not taking a quarterback in the draft class that ultimately they had the pick that could have got them Pat Mahomes. But he was so adamant that he didn't want that rookie quarterback to be the week one starter. And they still had Tyrod Taylor on a contract. So they thought, well, we'll just roll with Tyrod for a year, see what happens, then dip our toes into the quarterback waters. The Jets are in a similar situation, but they actually need to take a quarterback now because there aren't any veteran quarterbacks really out there for them to go out and get outside of Alex Smith. So I think it's, as I just said, it's similar. It's actually not. It's quite the opposite. But if it were me,
right.
if I was the Jets,
situation, right? It's more of a dire situation when it comes to the New York Jets, because basically the notion had been floated around that Sam Darnold was going to be retained. They were going to draft Zach Wilson, and they were going to have a quarterback. They were going to have a pseudo quarterback competition. Now, I think that probably would have created more problems than it solved, because take a look at what happened with Mark Sanchez. Okay, Mark Sanchez, you brought in Team Tebow. How did that work out? Okay, then you went, a couple of years later, you drafted Geno Smith. How did that work out?
Oh.
Okay, so I mean, the list goes on, and just the more. The definition of insanity is repeating the same process, hoping for a different outcome. And this is the point where Joe Douglas has an opportunity to take a look at Jets history and take a look at what's in front of him and take a look at the pieces that's in front of him and take a look at what's available and say, you know what? How do we break the cycle? And in breaking the cycle, you draft your rookie quarterback, you bring in a veteran, okay? You bring in a veteran to teach this kid, to work with this kid, and if the kid wins the job outright in training camp, then you go with him because the kid's earned it. But if he doesn't, you go with your veteran, you go 4, 5 games, 6 games, whatever you think your cutoff, your appropriate cutoff is, and then you turn the kid, you bring the kid over, much like Miami did with Tua this year. Okay. Now, Tua, I think personally, would have benefited from a full offseason, which is something he really did not get when he was drafted. Now, kudos to Ryan Fitzpatrick. Okay. Kudos to Ryan Fitzpatrick, because being a veteran around the league, he could come in, pick up the offense. It was an offense he was already familiar with. So it was easy for him to operate the machine. And this is the reason why Miami had the success that they did, because they didn't have to go to Tua right away. Okay, but I think that Tua will now benefit from having the successful season that the Miami Dolphins had last year, having a full off season with a similar offense. Okay, being able to compete in training camp, participating in OTAs, rookie mini camps, the whole skit, being able to get acclimated to exactly what's going to be expected of him, and I think that Tua will actually be a much improved quarterback next year. Okay, or actually this year upcoming. I'm sorry.
Well, before we, sorry, I wanted to just interject there.
Sure.
Before we kind of go into the AFC East outlook, and I definitely agree with you on your assessment of Tua. I actually thought it was a little crazy that, given the situation during the season last year, that Miami decided, hey, we're going to bench the best version of Ryan Fitzpatrick that there's ever been for a quarterback that is a deer in headlights currently. At that time, he was a deer in headlights. He was very. What's that?
So do you know why they did that? I'll tell you exactly why they did that. Because if the kid was going to go out there and he was going to win, he was going to win it on their own merit. And I think that Brian Flores wanted to see how the kid was going to react in this type of situation. So the kid got an education. But credit to the Buffalo Bills, because you know what? That game, you honestly could have rolled over, started your JV team, and then Miami could have broke their own arms, patting themselves on the back. Tua would have gotten a cheapened victory, in my opinion. Okay? Because you guys really didn't need the game. You had the AFC East already set up. You had your position, your playoff seeding. But Sean McDermott was determined that you guys were going to go in full throttle, and he did not want you guys taking the foot off the gas. And that's the reason why you guys smacked the Miami team that probably, if you think about it, 31 other teams really don't take that game seriously, and maybe rest their starters after halftime if the majority of their starters don't even start that game. Like you're pulling guys off the practice squad to start that game because you're resting your starters, making sure that everybody is good to go for playoff game number 1, which was the following weekend.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, there were guys that are major pieces of that offense last year, like Cole Beasley, who were out, and Robert Foster had Isaiah McKenzie had 3 touchdowns that day. So, you know, that was a huge victory for the Bills in terms of the depth pieces and the backups ultimately that routed the starters on offense and defense of Brian Flores and the Dolphins. So yeah, that was a solid win. That was one to smile at for sure if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. But I want your take on this. And we touched on the trade in the beginning of the show. You know, the Sam Darnold era that was in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with Sam Darnold. I think that they obviously he was destined to fail. I know that he failed, and a lot of it, some of it wasn't his fault, some of it was his fault. It just wasn't meant to be. It didn't work out. The relationship broke off. They parted ways. But with that being said, what are your expectations from Sam Darnold with the Carolina Panthers now that he is on the Carolina Panthers? Matt Rule seems like he's very high on Sam Darnold, but you still got Teddy Bridgewater there. What do you think is going to materialize in Carolina with Sam Darnold?
Well, I think that Sam Darnold's going to be given an opportunity to compete for the starting job, and you know what? I wish him well. And if he can go out there and he can beat Teddy Bridgewater for the starting job, then I expect Sam to do well in Carolina. So, and look, the way I look at it is like this. If Matt Rule can't fix this kid and he's making the same mistakes down in Carolina that he made as a New York Jet, then he's unfixable. He'll probably be a backup in this league for the rest of his NFL tenure. And to me, behind a much improved offensive line, much better weapons, although Carolina is not ready for primetime yet, they're right there. So you got Christian McCaffrey on that team. He may not really be expected to do much. He may be expected to just be a game manager. And if he could just learn how to be a game manager, then he'll be fine. But, I mean, everyone's expecting that now he's going to go down to Carolina and he's going to explode the same way Ryan Tannehill exploded. Well, guess what, sports fans? Ryan Tannehill exploded because he's got a different skill set than Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and the team – yeah, the team down there, not to interrupt you, sorry, but the team down there was very different in Tennessee. They have a defensive-minded coach. The defense is stacked on that team. And you have a running back that you can give the ball 35 times in a game that nobody else has. So, I know that Carolina has a great running back, but it's not the same type of offense in Tennessee that it is in Carolina, right?
Nope.
Yeah,
I think the good thing about it is that he'll be reunited with Robbie Anderson, somebody who he has familiarity with. So I think that'll ease his transition. And as I said, personally, I think that if the Panthers can't cut Teddy Bridgewater or can't find a trade partner for Teddy Bridgewater, then Sam are going to be competing for the starting job. So to me, it was a win-win for both teams. Sam wasn't going to make it here. He just wasn't. The franchise did not believe in him. He did not believe in the franchise, obviously, with the surprise party that he was all happy about going to Carolina, which is fine because he was probably happy about getting the hell out of Dodge. Okay? Right. So the way I look at it's like this. I wish Sam well. I hope he does well. But as a Jets fan, I'm prepared. I'm ready to turn the page. I'm sick of talking about this. I'm sick of talking about the past and the crap that we had to go through. To me, as a Jets fan, I'm looking at the organization like this. It is now a blank canvas. We have an opportunity to build something here, which is something we've not seen before. So let's build it. Let's sit back and watch, and enjoy it for once. Instead of being the negative, this team sucks, the franchise sucks, fire Joe Douglas, fire Robert Saleh, I don't care if he has coached the game, fire Matt LaFleur, he friggin' sucks too. Fire the ball boy, the flight crew, the janitorial staff, the entire executive staff, everybody. They all get fired. I don't care. All right? That is the mentality of the atypical negative Jets fan. Okay? They look at the glass as one half full. We didn't all address it. No, half empty. I'm sorry.
Half empty. Yep.
They didn't do this. They didn't do that. They didn't do that. They spend more time bitching about the things that they didn't do rather than saying, wow, we got Corey Davis. Wow, we got Keelan Cole. We actually got some receivers on here besides Denzel Mims and Jamison Crowder and Vincent Smith. We don't have to go to Publix or A&P to go recruit a beggar or a checkout guy to come and play a receiver for the Jets. Oh, happy day!
Oh, that's hilarious.
Okay, and then hey, let's continue. We got Carl Lawson, right? We got Vinny Curry. They added some serious firepower to the defensive line. Why? To generate a pass rush. Hey, the Jets haven't had a pass rusher since John Abraham. Oh, my God. We've actually got a pass rush if everything comes together. Woo! Okay, so for me as a Jets fan, I'm looking at what the team can become from the acquisitions that we made over the offseason.
Right.
Yes, offensive line still needs to be cornerbacks, linebackers, kicking still needs to be addressed. There's a lot of holes on this team that still need to be addressed. We get it. I get it. Okay? But I'm also a realist because I know that Joe Douglas up there has probably got a plan like this in his drawer that nobody knows about, how to address all of these things. So let the man do his job. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. I like that assessment, going from a very frustrating season last year, turning the page on it, going with the new look New York Jets as far as Robert Saleh, a work in progress, I think. Truthfully,
right now.
What's that?
I hate the new uniform. I hate the uniforms. I'm gonna let that known. I love the helmet. Love the way the helmet looks.
The helmet's awesome.
The jersey,
I love the helmet.
I feel like that's the Saskatchewan Rough Riders from the CFL.
Saskatchewan.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you were to if you were to give like an AFC East outlook, you said that the Bills are probably going to be running things in the AFC East. What are your thoughts on this? And to wrap up the show here, what are your thoughts on the quote-unquote spending spree that we saw take place within the Patriots organization? They go out, they spend a boatload of money on Hunter Henry. I think I know where this is going, but go out, they spend Hunter Henry. They go out and get Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar. They go out and get some mid-tier guys and spend some big money on some mid-tier free agents. What are your thoughts on that?
By the midway point of the season, don't be surprised if 50% of that team is on injured reserve. I was going to say that.
And another
I'm sorry.
season.
I know
another season of Cam Newton.
I know. I can just see it. Your comments are going to blow up. He's a Patriot hater. He's a Patriot hater. Blah, blah, blah. Look, I'm going to say something right now. Tom Brady proved that Bill Belichick is nothing without him. Because you know why? Because he couldn't. Cam Newton was okay until he got COVID. Now, all of a sudden, that's the big excuse for Cam Newton. Oh, he had COVID. He wasn't the same. He wasn't this. He wasn't that. He wasn't the third. Wait a second. You drafted a kid named Jared Stidham, who you hung on to for 3 years, who Bill Belichick thought, oh yeah, he's the heir apparent to Tom Brady. We're set at the quarterback position, this, that, and a third. Right. And who's he throwing the ball to? Okay, he's throwing the ball
to Harry and all these bums.
Yeah. That can't catch a cold. You may as well just call him Stephen Hill 2.0, another great draft pick by the New York Jets. Thanks very much, you idiots. So, it's like you're throwing the ball to guys who nobody's ever heard of, okay? And then now you overpay for Nelson Aguilar, okay? You get Jonnu Smith, you get Hunter Henry. These guys that are coming off the best years of their career, go and take a look at their stats, Ryan. Do you realize that everyone that the New England Patriots have signed in the offseason, offensive-wise, they have not had a 1,000-yard season? Hunter Henry doesn't have 1,000 yards receiving. Jonnu Smith doesn't have 1,000 yards receiving. Okay? They average being out 3 to 4 games in the past couple of seasons that they've played. Okay? Nelson Aguilar, who's the prime example of hit or miss. Sure, he hit when he was in Philly. Okay, did very well when he had Nick Foles throwing him the ball. Did okay when he had Carson Wentz throwing him the ball. What has he done since then?
Yeah, I think that to me, the moral of the story with the Patriots is that being that they don't have Tom Brady, they don't have the guy that can recruit these free agents anymore. So now they are desperate in free agency, and they have to go out and spend more money on players that they didn't have to spend for 20 years. I mean, really, they didn't have to go out and recruit anyone when they had Tom Brady because they had Tom Brady. Now that Brady's gone, they have to overpay for guys like Hunter Henry who haven't even finished a season, let alone from start to finish, let alone get the 1,000 yards. They got to go out and spend on somewhat tier wide receivers like Nelson Aguilar, 1 year, $12 million a year. You know who's not making $12 million a year? Stephon Diggs. So that just goes to show you the ridiculousness of how much the Patriots have overpaid.
I'm sorry. This is coming from a guy who plays against him twice a year. Stephon Diggs, in my opinion, is a better receiver than Nelson Aguilar.
Oh,
and I think
100%. Not even close.
The Patriots went and broke the bank, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to buy their way out of 7-9. They're doing the same exact thing, or they've done the same exact thing this offseason that they've laughed at other teams for doing.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
So now I can't wait to see the epic 7-10 season, Ryan. I can't wait to
7-10. I love it. 7-10. I think prediction. I want your record prediction for the Jets. What are you saying wins, losses wise?
To me, believe it or not, I'm not even looking at a wins record. People have asked me to give them predictions unofficially, and I basically have said, based on the schedule, I've not done enough research, proper record prediction now. But to me,
you do see improvement, though.
Well, I see improvement roster-wise because I actually saw improvement roster-wise last year as far as the offensive line. And the offensive line went from being the worst in the league to 29th overall in the league. Okay, so there was a little bit of improvement, maybe from here to here, but still not enough for me to go and to feel positive about it where I could say, yeah, I think we could roll with this. I think it could be okay. But to me, the bar is set at 2-14. No matter what upgrades the New York Jets have made, they're a 2-14 football team. And until you take the field and you do better, Bill Parcells said it best. You are what your record says you are.
Yeah.
Right now, the New York Jets are 2-14. So
yeah, I like that.
So the way that I'm looking at next year is this upcoming season is a complete development season. Don't expect playoffs. Expect there to be bad games. Expect there to be good games. So for me, I'd be happy with 6-11. I would be happy with 7-10. Okay. Hell, I'll even go out on a limb and say, I'll be happy with 8-9, Ryan.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. That would be a big turnaround if they were to get 8 wins. That's what I'm seeing as the next step for them to get close to 500. Not that you can be 500 anymore because there's 17 weeks in the season now, but to me, I think that they're going to look more respectable. Their brand of football will look more respectable. And let's be honest, last year they were not a respectable brand of football. And no fan base, despite the rivalry between the Bills and the Jets, no fan base deserves that. I don't think any fan base deserves what the Jets fans experienced the last couple of years with Adam Gase. And seeing Sam Darnold go, for some fans, it probably really hurt. For other fans, it probably felt like, au revoir, we're moving on. Like yourself, you feel like, hey, wish you the best, but we're turning the page and it's time to go into this Zach Wilson era or Justin Fields era and move on. Sometimes things don't work out.
I loved Sam. You know it. From the conversations we've had on air, off air, I loved Sam. I spent an entire offseason last year going into the 2020 season explaining, mapping out why I expected Sam Darnold's year 3 to be a breakout year for him. And you know what? Didn't happen. So, because it didn't happen, at this point, is he worth the investment? And the answer was no. Because if we sat here and the Jets went 2-14 and Sam Darnold threw for over 3,500 yards, had maybe 27, 28 touchdowns, and maybe, 8 or 9 picks instead of his 17 and 11 or whatever the hell he threw last year, we would be having an entirely different conversation right now. But he didn't do it. And there's only so much blame on the offensive line. There's only so much you could blame on coaching. There's only so much you could blame on the skill position players. And the Jets didn't have a lot of talent on this team last year. They didn't. I'm talking from a Jets fan. Okay, where I look at teams around the league and I'm like, how is it their practice squad guys or their 4th tier and 5th tier guys are playing better than starters on this team? So, to me, I want to see an overall organizational improvement. Yeah. But the one goal that I have for this team, as far as the AFC East is concerned, go 500. At least go 500. Even if you go 2-4, put a scare into somebody. Make the Bills have to come from behind. Make the Dolphins have to come from behind. Make the Patriots have to come from behind. Okay? Go 3-3 in your division. Show me that you can keep up with now what's starting to turn into the hardest division in football. Show me you can play with them. Because if you can play with them, then you can go toe-to-toe with Baltimore. You can go toe-to-toe with Pittsburgh. You can go toe-to-toe with Kansas City. And not bat an eyelash.
Yeah, I like that. I think you're right. And that's what I saw from my Buffalo Bills. And you mentioned they went 12-4. I gotta correct you, CJ. They went 13-3 last year. So they went 13. One game better than what you thought. So, but no, I had to throw that out there just because we saw the team go from 6-10 in Allen's rookie season to 10-6 to 13-3. That's, it sounds so obvious and so Sherlock. No shit Sherlock of a take there, but they improved each and every year under Allen and under McDermott. It takes a collective, hierarchy from the top down in order for an organization to change. And I think that's what the Jets are trying to recreate. I think that's what a lot of teams are trying to recreate. Brian Flores has talked about it in terms of the Bills, and Robert Saleh talked about it in terms of the Bills and some of the other teams out there that have had that stability at the top, the Ravens, the Steelers, and now, the Bills as McDermott heads into his 5th season. But, CJ, always a pleasure having you on the show. I don't wish the Jets too good of things, but I wish the best for the fan base. They deserve better than the Adam Gase era.
Oh, please. I'm so glad he is gone. You have no idea. That whole place required I just when he was leaving, like they should have just burned MetLife down. Like everything that he touched,
just throw it away. Just throw it away.
Right. Throw it away. Don't even bother. But wait, awesome. It's a brand new car. I don't care. If he looked at it, throw it away.
That's awesome. Well, CJ, thanks for joining me, buddy. I look forward to having you on and talking with you more throughout the offseason. Best of luck to your Jets in the draft, but not too much luck.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's always a privilege being on. Don't forget, you got to come and join us for the AFC Summit, which will be taking place after the draft. Date to be determined. So we'll talk about that off the air once the draft has concluded. For you to make an appearance on Weapons Hot, so we can return the favor and have a nice AFC Summit.
I look forward to it. I'll be flexing the guns as a representative of the 2020 AFC East champion Buffalo Bills, and hoping that we push the envelope.
And you'll have every right to.
Take care, CJ. I really appreciate you hopping on.
All righty. Thanks very much. Appreciate you having me on. Love you guys.
Take care, buddy. So that was CJ DeSimone. I had to have myself head down to the dining room area in my house due to the fact that the internet connection was really funky. This COVID era of things, the internet connection has been kind of weird. But hey, we're making it happen. We're doing what we can. I want to get to some comments here. 7-8 wins. Competitive football is a step in the right direction, and that makes me happy. I believe Kilted Haggis is a Jets fan. No ill feeling for the Bills. We have all suffered together at the hands of the Pats. I was cheering on Allen and the Bills doing it in the playoffs. I'm from Scotland, though, so don't have the same rivalry. Appreciate the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. That was CJ DeSimone of the Weapons Hot broadcast, joining Ryan Thomas, yours truly, here on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Continue to stay safe and tune in to the next show. I'll be on with Kurt Haumesser. This episode, as are all the episodes, they'll be all available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts. Anywhere you find your podcast, you'll be able to find my show. So take care, and last, certainly not least, go Bills.